chapter 5, 6, 7, and 8. I am using the Interlinear Bible, which is the literal Greek translation. Mark chapter 5. And they came to the other side of the sea, to the country of the Gadarenes. And he coming out from the boat, immediately out of the tombs a man with an unclean spirit met him, who had his abode among the tombs. And no one was able to bind him, not even with chains, because he had often been bound with fetters and chains, and the chains had been torn by him, and the fetters had been shattered, and no one was able to subdue him. And continually, night and day, in the hills and in the tombs, he was crying and cutting himself with stones. And seeing Jesus from afar, he ran and bowed the knee to him, and crying with a loud voice, he said, What is it to me and to you, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I adjure you by God not to torment me. For he said to him, Unclean spirit, come out of the man. And he asked him, What is your name? And he replied, saying, My name is Legion, because we are many. And he begged him very much that he would not send them outside the country. And a great herd of pigs were feeding there near the mountain. And all the demons begged him, saying, Send us into the pigs, that we may enter into them. And Jesus immediately allowed them. And coming out, the unclean spirits entered into the pigs. And the herd rushed down the cliff into the sea. And they were about 2,000, and they were choked in the sea. And those who fed the pigs fled. And they told it to the city and to the fields. And they came out to see what was happening. And they came to Jesus and stared at the one who had been demon possessed, sitting and being clothed, and being in his senses, the one who had the legion. And they feared. And those who had seen related how it happened to the demon possessed one, and about the pigs. And they began to beg him to depart from their borders. And he, having entered into the boat, the former demoniac begged him that he be with him. But Jesus did not allow him, but said to him, Go to your house, to your own, and announce to them what the Lord has done to you, and favored you. And he left and began to proclaim in Decapolis what Jesus did to him. And all marveled. And Jesus, having crossed over in the boat again to the other side, a large crowd gathered upon him, and he was by the sea. And behold, one of the synagogue rulers named Jairus came, and seeing him, he fell at his feet. And he begged him very much, saying, My daughter is at the last end. I pray that you will come and lay hands on her, that she may be cured and live. And he went with him, and a large crowd followed him and pressed on him. And a certain woman, being with a flow of blood 12 years, and who had suffered many things by many physicians, and had spent all things that she had, and gaining nothing, but rather coming to worse, hearing about Jesus coming in the crowd behind him, she touched his garment. For she said, If I may but touch his garments, I will be cured. And instantly the fountain of her blood was dried up, and she knew in her body that she was healed of the plague. And knowing instantly within himself that power had gone forth out of him, turning in the crowd, Jesus said, Who touched my garments? And his disciples said to him, You see the crowd pressing on you, and do you say, Who touched me? And he looked around to see the one who had done this. And the woman, being afraid and trembling, knowing what had happened on her, she came and fell down before him, and told him all the truth. And he said to her, Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be whole from your plague. And as he was speaking, they came from the synagogue ruler, saying, Your daughter has died. Why do you still trouble the teacher? But hearing the word spoken, Jesus said to the synagogue ruler at once, Do not fear, only believe. And he did not allow anyone to go with him except Peter and James and John, the brother of James. And they came into the synagogue ruler's house. And he saw tumult and weeping and much wailing. And going in, he said to them, Why do you make a tumult and weep? The child has not died, but is sleeping. And they laughed at him. But putting all out, he took along the father and the mother of the child and those with him, and passed on into where the child was lying. And taking hold of the child's hand, he said to her, Talitha kumo, which is, being translated, Little girl, I say to you, rise up. And immediately the little girl rose up and walked, for she was 12 years old. And they were amazed with great amazement. And very much he directed them that no one should know this. And he said to give her something to eat. Mark chapter 6. And he went out from there and came to his native place, and his disciples followed him. And a Sabbath occurring, he began to teach in the synagogue. And hearing, many were amazed, saying, From where came these things to this one? And what is the wisdom given to him, that even such works of power come about through his hands? Is this one not the carpenter, the son of Mary, and the brother of James and Joseph, and Judas and Simon? And are not his sisters here with us? And they were offended in him. And Jesus said to them, A prophet is not without honor, except in his native place, and among the relatives, and in his own house. And he could do no work of power there, except he performed healing on a few infirm ones, laying on his hands. And he marveled because of their unbelief. And he went around the villages in a circuit, teaching. And he called the 12 near, and began to send them out 2 by 2. And he gave them authority over the unclean spirits, and charged them that they take nothing in the way, except only a staff, no bag, no bread, no copper in the belt, but having tied on sandals, and not putting on 2 tunics. And he said to them, Wherever you enter into a house, remain there until you go out from there. And as many as will not receive you, nor hear from you, having gone out from there, shake off the dust under your feet for a testimony to them. Truly I say to you, it will be more bearable for Sodom and Gomorrah in judgment day than for that city. And going out they proclaimed that men should repent. And they cast out many demons, and anointed with oil, and healed many sick ones. And Herod the king heard, for his name became publicly known. And he said, John the Baptist has been raised from the dead, and because of this the works of powers operate in him. Others said, He is Elijah, and others said, He is a prophet, or as one of the prophets. But hearing, Herod said, This one is John, whom I beheaded. He has risen from the dead. For having sent, Herod himself had seized John, and bound him in the prison, because of Herodias, the wife of his brother Philip, because he had married her. For John had said to Herod, It is not lawful for you to have the wife of your brother. And Herodias held it against him, and desired to kill him, but was not able, for Herod feared John, knowing him to be a holy and just man, and kept him safe. And hearing him, he did many things, and gladly heard from him. And a suitable day having come, when Herod made a supper for his great ones on his birthday, also the Cheliarts, and the first one of Galilee, and the daughter of Herodias herself entering and dancing, she also pleased Herod, and those reclining with him. The king said to the girl, Ask me whatever you wish, and I will give it to you. And he swore to her, Whatever you ask me, I will give to you, up to half of my kingdom. And going out, she said to her mother, What shall I ask? And she said, The head of John the Baptist. And immediately going in with haste to the king, she asked, saying, I desire that at once you give me the head of John the Baptist on a platter. And becoming deeply grieved because of the oaths and those reclining together, the king did not wish to reject her. And the king, sending a guardsman at once, he ordered his head to be brought. And going, he beheaded him in the prison, and brought his head on a platter, and gave it to the girl. And the girl gave it to her mother. And hearing, his disciples went and took his corpse and placed it in a tomb. And the apostles gathered to Jesus, and they told him all things, even what they did and what they taught. And he said to them, You yourselves come apart into a desert place and rest a little. For those coming and those going were many, and they did not even have opportunity to eat. And they departed by boat in a desert place apart. And the crowd saw them going, and many recognized him, and they ran together on foot there from all the cities, and came before them, and came together to him. And going out, Jesus saw a large crowd, and had pity on them, because they were as sheep having no shepherd. And he began to teach them many things. And it now becoming a late hour, drawing near to him, the disciples said, The place is desert, and it is now a late hour. Send them away, that going away to the surrounding fields and villages, they may buy bread for themselves, for they do not have what they may eat. And answering, he said to them, You give them food to eat. And they said to him, Going, should we buy 200 denarii of bread, and give them to eat? And he said to them, How many loaves do you have? Go and see. And knowing, they said, 5, and 2 fish. And he ordered them all to recline, group by group, on the green grass. And they sat, group by 100, and by 50. And taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, looking up to heaven, he blessed, and broke the loaves, and gave to his disciples, that they might set before them. And he divided the 2 fish to all, and all ate, and were satisfied. And they took up 12 hand baskets full of fragments, also from the fish. And those eating were about 5,000. And at once he constrained his disciples to enter into the boat, and to go before to the other side, to Bethsaida, until he should dismiss the crowd. And taking leave of them, he went away to the mountain to pray. And it becoming evening, the boat was in the middle of the sea, and he alone on the land. And he saw them being distressed in the rowing, for the wind was contrary to them. And it was about the 4th watch of the night when he came toward them walking on the sea. And he willed to go by them. But seeing him walking on the sea, they thought it to be a ghost. And they cried out, for all saw him and were troubled. And immediately he spoke to them and said to them, Have courage, I am. Do not fear. And he went up to them into the boat, and the wind was cut off. And they were amazed, exceedingly beyond measure within themselves, and marveled, for they did not understand the miracle of the loaves, for their hearts were hardened. And crossing over, they came into the land of Gennesaret, and drew to shore. And they coming out of the boat, at once knowing him, they ran around all the neighborhood. And they began to carry about those having illness on cots to where they heard that he was. And wherever he went into villages or cities or fields, they laid the ailing ones in the markets, and begged him, if only they may touch the fringe of his garment. And as many as touched him were healed. Mark chapter 7. And the Pharisees were assembled to him, also some of the scribes coming from Jerusalem. And seeing some of his disciples eating bread with unclean hands, that is, unwashed hands, they found fault. For the Pharisees and all the Jews do not eat unless they wash the hands with the fist, holding the tradition of the elders. And coming from the market, they do not eat unless they wash themselves. And there are many other things which they receive to hold, washing of cups, and of utensils, and of bronze vessels and couches. Then the Pharisees and scribes questioned him, Why do your disciples not walk according to the tradition of the elders, but eat bread with unwashed hands? And answering, he said to them, Well, did Isaiah prophesy concerning you, hypocrites? As it has been written, This people honors me with the lips, but their heart is far away from me. And in vain they worship me, teaching as doctrines the commandments of men. For forsaking the commandment of God, you hold the tradition of men, washing of utensils and cups, and many other such like things you do. And he said to them, do you do well to set aside the commandment of God, so that you may keep your tradition? For Moses said, honor your father and your mother, and the one speaking evil of father or mother, let him expire by death. But you say, if a man says to his father or mother, Corban, which is a gift, whatever you may profit by me, and you no longer allow him to do anything for his father or mother, making the word of God of no effect by your tradition, which you delivered, and many such like things you do. And calling all the crowd near, he said to them, all hear me and understand. There is nothing from outside the man which entering into him, which is able to defile him, but the things going out from him, those are the things defiling the man. If anyone has ears to hear, let him hear. And when he entered into a house from the crowd, his disciples questioned him about the parable. And he said to them, are you also so undiscerning? Do you not perceive that all that enters from the outside into the man is not able to defile him? This is because it does not enter into his heart, but into the belly, and goes out into the waste bowl, purging all the foods. And he said, that passing out of the man, it is that defiles the man. For from within, out of the heart of men, pass out the evil thoughts, adulteries, fornications, murders, thefts, greedy desires, iniquities, deceit, lustful desires, a wicked eye, blasphemy, pride, foolishness. All these evil things pass out from within and defile the man. And rising up from there, he went away into the borders of Tyre and Sidon. And entering into the house, he desired no one to know. But he could not be hidden. But hearing about him, a woman came up, one whose daughter had an unclean spirit, and she fell down at his feet. And the woman was a Greek, a Syrophoenician, I can't say that, a Syrophoenician by race. And she asked him that he would cast out the demon from her daughter. And Jesus said to her, first allow the children to be satisfied, for it is not good to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs. But she answered and said to him, yes, Lord, for even the dogs under the table eat from the crumbs of the children. And he said to her, because of this word, go. The demon has gone out from your daughter. And going away to her house, she found the demon had gone out, and her daughter was laid on the couch. And again going out from the borders of Tyre and Sidon, he came to the Sea of Galilee, in the midst of the borders of the Decapolis. And they brought a deaf one to him, hardly speaking. And they begged him that he put his hand on him. And taking him away apart from the crowd, he put his fingers into his ears, and spitting, he touched his tongue. And looking up into heaven, he groaned. And he said to him, Ephphatha, which is, be opened. And instantly his ears were opened, and the bond of his tongue was loosened. And he spoke correctly. And he ordered them that they should tell no one. But as much as he ordered them, much more abundantly they proclaimed. And they were most exceedingly amazed, saying, he has done all things well. He makes even the deaf to hear and the dumb to speak. Mark chapter 8. The crowd being very great in those days, and not having anything they may eat, Jesus calling his disciples near, he said to them, I have pity on the crowd, because now 3 days they remain with me, and they do not have what they may eat. And if I send them away fasting to their house, they will faint in the way, for some of them come from afar. And his disciples answered him, from where will any one here be able to satisfy these with bread on a desert? And he asked them, how many loaves do you have? And they said, 7. And he ordered the crowd to recline on the ground. And taking the 7 loaves, giving thanks, he broke and gave to his disciples, that they might serve. And they served the crowd. And they had a few fish, and blessing, he said for these also to be served. And they ate and were satisfied. And they took up over above 7 lunch baskets of fragments. And those eating were about 4,000. And he sent them away. And at once entering into the boat with his disciples, he came into the region of Dalmanutha. And the Pharisees went out and began to argue with him, seeking from him a sign from heaven, tempting him. And groaning in his spirit, he said, why does this generation seek a sign? Truly I say to you, as if this generation will be given a sign. And leaving them again, entering into the boat, he went away to the other side. And the disciples forgot to take loaves, and they did not have any with them except 1 loaf in the boat. And he charged them, saying, see, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees, and of the leaven of Herod. And they reasoned with one another, saying, because we have no loaves? And knowing, Jesus said to them, why do you reason because you have no loaves? Do you not perceive, nor realize? Have you still hardened your heart? Having eyes, do you not see? And having ears, do you not hear? And do you not remember, when I broke the 5 loaves to the 5,000, how many hand baskets full of fragments did you take up? They said to him, 12. And when the 7 to the 4,000, how many lunch baskets did you take up with the fillings of fragments? And they said, 7. And he said to them, how do you not understand? And he came to Bethsaida. And they carried a blind one to him, and begged him that he would touch him. And laying hold of the blind one's hand, he led him forth outside the village. And spitting into his eyes, laying his hands on him, he asked him if he saw anything. And looking, he said, I see men as trees walking. Then he placed his hands on his eyes again, and made him look up. And he was restored, and saw all clearly. And he sent him to the house, saying, you may not go into the village, nor may tell anyone in the village. And Jesus and his disciples went out to the villages of Caesarea of Philip. And in the way he questioned his disciples, saying to them, whom do men say me to be? And they answered, John the Baptist, and others say Elijah, but others one of the prophets. And he said to them, and you? Whom do you say me to be? And answering, Peter said to him, you are the Christ. And he warned them again that they may tell no one about him. And he began to teach them that it is necessary for the Son of Man to suffer many things, and to be rejected of the elders and chief priests and scribes, and to be killed, and after 3 days to rise again. And he spoke the word openly. And taking him aside, Peter began to rebuke him. But turning around and seeing his disciples, he rebuked Peter, saying, go behind me, Satan, because you do not mind the things of God, but the things of men. And calling near the crowd with his disciples, he said to them, whoever desires to come after me, let him deny himself and take his cross, and let him follow me. For whoever desires to save his soul, he shall lose it. But whoever shall lose his soul for my sake and the gospel, that one shall save it. For what shall it profit a man if he gain the whole world, yet damage his soul? Or what shall a man give as an exchange for his soul? For whoever may be ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, the Son of Man will also be ashamed of him when he comes in the glory of his Father along with the holy angels.